Hi, this is an updated video of the budget template, relevant as of 26th of December 2020. Cool. Okay. So, here's how you can use this budget template. Start at the very beginning by creating a target budget. And you can do that in the sample target budget area. And so there are a few quirks to the way that I do this that you can change if you want, but I'll point them out along the way. But first, how this generally works is you have this target budget. So we have rent, loans, different types of savings, groceries, etc. All the things that you do, essentially. And then you have an underestimate. So let's say that you don't know your rent yet and you're making a budget for when you move somewhere. You have an underestimate and you have an overestimate, and an underestimate and overestimate of everything. And the kind of general idea is that the underestimate is you're underestimating all of your expenses so that you can maximize your savings because you want to maximize how much you save. An overestimate is, let's say, groceries are more expensive than you anticipated, and whatnot. So this just overestimates all of those things that hope you want to spend less on, but just so that you have a realistic understanding of what could happen, so that you aren't taken aback, and so that you know how far your budget can stretch before you don't actually have any savings, and you know exactly where to put your money. So there are a few kind of specific categories here, and I've commented over here to explain what they mean for ones that don't exactly make sense. The first thing that I'll talk about are the savings ones. So we have a few different types of savings, and I'll just filter to only see savings. So we have rainy day savings, retirement savings, and treat yourself savings, which are not necessarily self-explanatory except for the retirement account. So I put savings in 3 different places. I have a retirement account that you should, no matter how old you are, even if you're like 5 years old, get a retirement account. I don't care if you put $1 into it every year, or a euro, or whatever your currency is. Money compounds. Look it up. Really important to make a retirement account. Just go to your bank and make a retirement account right fucking now. Just do it. It's so important because money grows. Okay, the second one are rainy day savings. And so this is for big things before your retirement. So for example, buying a house. You want to save up for a long time to do that because it will cost thousands and thousands of whatever your currency is. And yeah, basically big things that will require thousands in savings. And then my treat yourself savings is for smaller things. So let's say you want to buy a new fancy blender because as much as you know that materialism is bad, you still really want a Vitamix. So you save up smaller amounts for things that cost more in the range of like 50 to a couple hundred. So these are not things that you need thousands of whatever for, but in fact you just need hundreds or 50s. And so that's where I put that. And so specifically the treat yourself savings, I put in like, I have N26, which is a specific bank that like, I don't know, I think it's only specific to Europe. I don't know if you can have N26 anywhere else, but some of these like online banking, like easy online banking for young people, banks will allow you to, I don't know, have spaces where basically you can have money in one account and then have different spaces in that account. So like a space for short-term saving, a space for long-term saving, a space for food, a space for this, a space for that. So I have a space for my treat yourself savings, and I basically move 100 or whatever amount out every month into that space, and I just let my money collect there. And let's say now I want a new pair of headphones. Again, consumerism is bad, but let's say I want a new pair of headphones. I would pay for that out of my treat yourself savings, and I wouldn't put it into my expenses because I would just say I get to use this money however I want, and I don't categorize it. I don't worry about it. If I don't have anything in it, then I don't buy anything. If I do have something in it, I can use it without any question, without anything. It's just whatever I want it to be. So that's where that comes in. So I'll also use that for like gifts. So like during Christmas, I'll take money out of that because again, it's not like stuff that I need for my everyday life. So I'll take money out of the Treat Myself account. You can change the name because it sounds silly when I keep saying Treat Myself. Okay, so those are the 3 types of savings that I do. So short term, medium term, long term, in other words. I could have just written that. So again, like I said, gifts and like random things that you want but don't need go in there. But then there are a bunch of things that you do need, and those fall under different categories. So you have rent, you have loans, things that you need to pay off. You need to eat, so you need to get groceries. If you aren't eating, eat. You probably need a cell phone. Random things that you subscribe to. So I have like a Spotify and some other thing. I think I mostly only use Spotify as a recurring thing. Transit, so you should invest in transit. Always pay for transit because transit's really important because cars are evil. Hygiene, so hand soap, hair wash, etc. General supplies for like my house, I think. Yeah, so like candles, plants, etc. Cleaning, so obviously. Oh, I skipped donating. I put in donating because because it's important to donate, even if you only donate because a month, because getting into the habit is the most important thing. So I put that in there, and I just have recurring donations that happen every month to like organizations that spread out donations. So like GiveWell is one organization. They do more like humanitarian worldwide donation stuff, and then you can also donate to things like not to give away my very obvious political leanings, but like Act Blue, or I don't know, maybe there's some kind of Republican Act Red if you're into that, for like spreading it out to different, for me, like Democratic stuffs. Anyway, so just do that, like don't think about it, and it just kind of goes out every month. And then the rest, eating out and drinks, and then general entertainment. I differentiate between the two because I go out to eat a lot, or rather I go out for drinks a lot with friends, and I don't necessarily go out to clubs or movies or whatnot. So in my own personal thing, I separate the two because I don't really spend much on general entertainment anyway. Okay, so yeah, set up those numbers. Give them like how flexible you want them to be. So like you have to give your money in rent, and you have to pay your loans off. Pay all your stuff on time. Really important. Also get an app that allows you to check in on your credit score if you're in the US, and that is important to you / important to where you live, because credit score will F you over, even if you do the stupidest of small things. Anyway, and then you have moderately flexible for things that like you could change but you don't need to, and then flexible. So let's say that you are consistently running over your budget. You start by cutting away from the flexible stuff. So you start by saying, okay, I don't need to go out and have that many cappuccinos. And then you would cut back on that. Okay, cool. Okay, so back in the main page, just so you know, you got the kind of target budget. So what those numbers are adding up to should be your monthly cap, which should be however much you get per month, minus any taxes that you have to pay. And then there are a few things that we need to do to set up this template. So to actually set this up before we begin. So you want to do a few things. One, there are 3, just to give you an overview, there are 3 databases. So there's one, which is your daily expenses. So you input here anything that you're paying throughout the month, and I'll talk about that later. Here we see by the individual month how you're doing. So how much maybe should you have spent this month thus far? Let's say we're 50% through the month, you should have spent 50%. And then we have the averaged amount over every month, over all the months. And that basically kind of averages it out. So it's okay if you spend a lot more on food this month, as long as you kind of spend a bit less on food next month. And that kind of shows you overall, how are you doing? What are you spending the most on? What are you spending the least on? And to set this up, we need to do a few things, but there's one main thing is we need to calculate what our non-fixed expenses are. And that's because here it's telling us how much we're expecting to spend at the middle of the month or at any given day in the month. But if we have rent, that kind of throws everything out of proportion, because rent usually can be a significant portion of our payment. So we actually want this to be just flexible, or rather just non-fixed expenses that are calculating into this specific database, because that's all that really matters, because the other ones you don't have control over. The way you calculate that, you go back to your target budget.
I'm re-recording this early in the morning because I messed it up in the first one. So to calculate that variable expense, we need to first calculate the fixed expenses total. So there are a few things that are definitely going to be fixed expenses. So your rent, you have to pay that every month. You have to pay your loans off every month. Let's say you have to pay your cell phone off every month. And then there are some things that are maybe a bit more flexible, but you do pay regularly every month. So maybe you regularly have some apps that you subscribe to. Maybe you have like a recurring donation somewhere. And then you also regularly have money transferring from your main account to a savings account or something like that. Those are things that maybe are flexible, but right now we'll treat them as fixed because at the moment they're happening every single month and they're happening with the exact same amount. Later on you can go in and adjust that if it's maybe ending up to be too much, but for now let's treat them as fixed. And how you would change them later is just by updating the flexible versus variable number versus fixed number later on, and some other numbers that you'll see later on in the tutorial. Okay, so the way that we then want to tag those is by going into this category section, and everything that's fixed, tag as recurring. So we see here, we now have all these recurring costs. And then what you want to do, so I've tagged cell phone recurring, random apps, etc., is I want to go in and I want to filter this view, and I want to say where category contains recurring. Okay. Make sure that nothing here is, or rather everything here is what you want it to be. Yep, these are all your things. And now that they're all recurring, we can see what's the sum of our underestimate of those things. So here it's 1,280. Then what you can do is minus the total from this, or rather minus this from the total. So you have 1,500, I'll bring that down here, 1,500 minus 1,280 is 220. So that means you have 220 flexible costs, or rather flexible money throughout the month. So that's money you can spend on entertainment, on eating, on groceries, etc. This number will obviously be super different for you, depending on how much you make and how much you are expecting to spend on certain things. And that is the correct number because that's just everything else minus what's here, and everything else just isn't tagged with recurring. So then we will use that number. We can incorporate it into our other calculations. So we'll go back to the budget area and we will go here to this spending analysis, and the reason why we did this was for individual months, so this analysis, not for the averaged over months analysis. So we'll open this up and we want to input that number here. So that number that we got, whatever it is, we want to put it into this monthly budget. So we want to input 220 because that was the variable expenses that we calculated from the previous section. What that does is it then tells you, okay, what's your expected? So it's the end of December. December's gone now. It's January. So we would have expected to spend 220. And just because I put in some random numbers, we actually spent a lot more than that. And we spent this much more than expected. You also have a section that tells you how much money is left this month, etc. And I'll talk more about this section later. And a quick disclaimer that the rest of the tutorial has that number as 400 because I didn't calculate it the first time around. So all of the numbers from now are based off of 400, not 220, just so that you don't get confused. So the next thing you need to do as kind of setup is filter these databases correctly. So number one, filter this database to show you the month that we're in. So let's say that we're in January.
we're just going to look at the month that contains January 2021, and it only will show us a month because I've actually created one. What you need to do, otherwise, if you've not already created it, is you need to go down and you need to add a new month. So let's add a month. Let's say that what you need to do is update the beginning date. So let's say January 1st, or let's make this one for February, why don't we? February 1st, and the end is February 28th. Okay, once that's there, now we would call that February. Great. But now we're in January, or we kind of in January, so we have this January 21st, or January of 2021, and so far we've spent nothing, which is great, so we're just on track. And we also don't expect to spend anything because it's not January yet. And then we would go in and we can add expenses. So let's actually change this back to December just so that it's more tangible. It's capital sensitive, so you have to make sure that the correct capitalization is there. So then every day, or rather at the beginning of the month for this, we also want to go in and we want to filter it so that it's the correct date. So we want to filter it so that the beginning of the month is the beginning date, the next date is the end of the month, and then we want to make sure that it's connected to that page. So we have now February, January, and December, so we would want to connect it to December because that's the month that we're in. Then every time that you buy something, you'd want to go in and add it here. So like I said, I actually don't even add rent to this because that's a fixed cost, so I don't need to log it because I know that it's going out of my account. So I actually don't even have that. So what I do have, though, are any small expenses. So anything I buy, like furniture for my house, or food, or transit, so anything like that, I'd add it here. And I can do that two ways. So one, I can do it on my browser. The way to do it on my browser, so like on my computer, in other words, is I would go in and I would not click this new button because it won't automatically add the link to this page. But if I click any of these plus buttons in any of these areas, so let's say I just bought, I put transit under life functioning. So let's just say I bought 4 ticket pass BVG, which is the name of the transit thing in my city. So I would click it open, since I've made it, and I would say that was €9. And that's all I have to do. Oh, actually, no, I have to say it's live functioning. So I have to actually add the template. So you have to click it inside one of the columns and then add the template. Then that will connect it to the correct month, and it will connect it to the correct thing for the overall averages over all of your months. So that's what this does. So this is for this month, and this is for averaging out over all the months. It will also tell you, we can kind of give this flexible if 100% necessary. We can also comment if we want, but that pretty much will fill in a lot of the info, and now we have that information here. And that's how you do that, and the other way that I do it is on my phone, and I will show you how I do that. So I have an iPhone, and iPhone now has these things called widgets. Maybe everyone else had them before iPhone. I don't really know. I'm not very educated on other phones. But basically, the way that you add them is you would click on a thing and you would say edit the home screen, and then you'd go up to this little plus button up here and you'd add Notion. So now we are done editing. And then in the Notion widget, I chose my favorites to be what shows up. And then if I were to add something, so let's just say I went and got a coffee, I'd add a daily expense. And it pulls up my daily expenses page. And then I'd want to go in and click the plus button. Let's see if I can do this. No, I couldn't. Okay. I'd click the plus button, and I would do the same thing. So I would, this is so complicated. I'd scroll down, I'd choose the correct category. So I'd label coffee as drinks out. I would type it in coffee, and I would type in the amount. I would type in, woo, so bright. Okay, never mind. I would just type in the amount. Basically, it looks the same on the browser, but on your phone. And so I'd do that on the fly or out and about when I have only my phone available. So as we saw, that adds in. And then this over here tells us, so we are 26 days into the year, which means we should be whatever 26 divided by 30% is, so I'll actually do that. So we're 26 divided by 30, so we're 86% of the month done. That means that we should roughly be through 86% of that kind of flexible, non-fixed budget. And so what 86% of 400 is roughly 332. And so far we've actually only spent 213 because I put in random as a 200 cost and some coffee and some random stuff. But let's say I then had spent on home and loans, I spent something that was 100 euros. Let's see if this works. Let's go 130 euros. It will tell me that I'm on track. I've only spent 12 more than expected, but I'm like roughly at the right number. That will change based off of the percentage. So then if I were to say that was actually 1,300, it will tell me, whoa, cut back. You've spent 1,182 euros more than expected. So it'll tell you how much more or less or you've spent, and it will tell you either that's good, that's okay, or that's bad. And so that's for an individual month. Then we can get an analysis of over every month. Basically, this will tell you your monthly averages divided by your expected expenses. In the last place, in the December monthly costs, we excluded fixed costs. You kind of want to do that here. So in your daily expenses, you won't be putting in those fixed costs because you'll forget about them, they're annoying, and they're happening every month, so there's no need for you to continually add them. So for those fixed costs, figure out what they are. For example, for me, it's rent, electricity, phone, etc. So all those fixed costs that we talked about, things that are consistently happening every month. So what you want to do in here is you want to add those fixed costs. So how you do that? I've already given you an example. So for home and loans, let's say your fixed cost is, for me, I add my rent plus my electricity plus internet. So I add those three things and I have a total for home and loans and I add that to this number. And then you want to do that for each of the next things. So you'll see the name of the subject of the area and you'll add the amount. So if I add 100 to my savings, I would add 100 here. If I had recurring Spotify, I'd add that Spotify amount there. If I was consistently donating, I'd add that donating amount there. And maybe you're taking classes and maybe those are also 100 of whatever you're doing. And life functioning might be like you have a transit card that you pay for every month. So those are examples of those things. You want to go in and add those. So those are the fixed costs that you won't put in your daily expenses, but that always regularly come out of your account every single month. They'll then add those into averages so that they aren't forgotten, and that way you're really only calculating that kind of fluctuating cost. So I'll just delete those zeros, and that's generally how you would do that. It will tell us based off of what the name is. Ignore these things. It's telling me what the names are because I have an extension that gives me German vocab. So then it will tell me either if I'm not saving enough, it will tell me to save more, it'll tell me I'm on track, it'll tell me that I'm doing well overall, or if it'll tell me to donate more, for example. So there's donation, there's saving, and then there's everything else. Everything else is like regular expenses. You don't want there to be more of it. Savings and donations, you want to be saving more and you want to be donating more, so it'll tell you to do more of that as opposed to the other way around. Okay. Whew, that about sums it up. Hopefully it was easy enough to follow. The last thing is that you have a filtered view of the action tracker here to only show you things that have to do with finances or purchases, just so if you want a filtered view of to-dos. Okay, that about covers it. If you have questions, as always, leave a comment, like and subscribe. Just kidding. I mean, do it if you want.